We are going to start our meeting today. Tom apologizes. He's going to be coming in a little bit later, but he will be here. If you have not signed in, be sure to sign in. We will be checking you off on those who attend via Zoom to make sure that we have your attendance. We're also looking at a questionnaire. We're trying to get some information on meetings and making sure that we have as many people coming as we can, making it as convenient as possible. So if you if those of you are in the room, if you'd get one of these questionnaires and take a look at it, think about it during our meeting. It talks about having talking about meetings that are coming up. It talks about what's the best day of the week, when the best time of the day is to have the meeting. So that's important. We also have an update to our sign-in sheet. We're doing that on purpose because we're trying to make sure that we are managing our CEUs. Now, let me actually officially start the meeting by going to this next slide here. And if we'd all stand and pledge our allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to learn and to serve those who we are responsible for by being better prepared for them. We ask you to give us some wisdom to help us to be able to do that and prevent injuries, loss of any kind in our workplace. We thank you for blessing the food that we're going to receive so that we'll be nourished and we'll also have a good fellowship. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Amen. You can have a seat. Today we have our one and only Randy Easterling. He's going to be doing best practices for a successful safety system, and he can start rolling as I get his presentation up here.
Tom will not be here.
Tom's not going to be here? Okay.
11:18, just leaving Auburn.
Push down to go to the next one.
Okay. All right. Good morning. I appreciate everybody being here today on a Friday. First day of summer, longest day of the year. So we'll see if it's the hottest day of the year to go, which will bring up another topic I'll get into in a minute. I have been doing kind of a series of talks through webinars and different things. And basically, it's been about motivating people to do safety, not just taking a stab at it, not just doing enough to keep OSHA off of you, not that type thing, but actually embracing it and getting returns. And part of the reason I had embarked on this was I've been doing this for 36 years at the university. And through OSHA and attorneys and different things, we had at one point in time moving forward, we had 8 companies that killed somebody we were working with. We had never had 8 companies at one time. So that got my attention. If you look at the data for Alabama from 2023, I think there were 67 fatalities in Alabama. About half those fatalities were on the road, automotive accidents. I can think of one company that basically had 4 people killed in one accident. So that was part of what got my attention. And the ones that we were seeing involved lockout, big surprise. A bunch of them dropped loads, rigging in construction. And not all of it was in construction. There were a few that basically was material handling, with fork trucks. So, all very easily avoidable. All just, let's put some attention, let's do some oversight. So we've been trying to get people's attention, do some outreach, do different things along those lines. And this is something we put together for RISCON here at AGC. Really what I'm looking at talking about is just things you can do to motivate ownership, to understand, there's more than just OSHA. And OSHA is necessary and people respond to it, but there's also the business case for this, where why should I do safety? Why should I spend the money on safety? Well, it's the return on investment, but the short, simple answer is one word: money, And do you want to stay in business? And some combination of a couple of these things I've got, we kind of talk about that. And you may find me talking about things that aren't in this presentation, but around another one. So hold on, we'll see what kind of ride we get. And please, if anybody wants to talk, anybody's got a point to make, anybody's got a question, just chime in. This is a group of people, most of whom we've known for a very long time. So, hey, we're all friends here. So Vince can find a way to cut the speed if we get something embarrassing. Okay.
That might be me. Okay.
Okay. All right. When you ask people, why do you do safety? Why do you have a safety program? Why do you have a safety director? These are kind of the answers, it's the right thing to do. Okay. We want everybody to go home the same way they came here. We're worried about OSHA. We're worried about our reputation. Hey, if I don't do things right, I'm not going to get that contract. Nobody's going to want to do business with me. What we pay in comp cost? Again, apparently I'm redundant. I got reputation again. So much for quality control. And it's good business. My answer is all these things, and it comes down to good business. It comes back to your profitability. Your reputation feeds into a lot of things. Do I want to do business with you? Are you a company I want to associate my company name with? Are you a company I want to work for? Do I feel safe here? Am I going to get business? I was talking to Steve. We had a client back in the 90s about to be kicked out of comp. And they literally, 50 employees, they're paying $125,000 a year. 3 years later, 2 years later, they had put in a safety system. They'd done it right. They had 150 employees. They're paying 22 grand a year. That was in 1992. So how many people were paying 150 grand, 125,000 in 1992 with 50 employees? You were a bad actor, and you're about to be bounced. But they also found the indirects. Turnover decreased, retention improved, all these indirects we talk about. And those are things to be considered. Then we look at reputation. Again, that goes to business, jobs, working with people, the community. How much money do you spend on your reputation? My first job was with a Fortune 50 paper company, the biggest in the world. We had one of the most inexplicable fatalities I know of. We had put in on a paper mill a silo, holding granular product, 6 months old. And for some reason, 2 of our maintenance guys were under it. Thing ruptured, killed them. We don't know why they were there. 5 minutes before, they'd been someplace else. Wouldn't have been a problem. 5 minutes later, same thing. And our plant engineer would have been raising hell at the contractor about the lousy job they did. Instead, this fatality investigation. OSHA's on site for 6 weeks. And we got fined $500 for failure to ultrasonically test this tank. This goes back to what you were talking about, ANSI. I still haven't found that one. But what does the paper say? $500 penalty. The message is a big company can kill somebody for $500. We were very much about being a family company. We spent a lot of money on restoring that in that area. Just knowing our people are important. And it was sincere. The favorite thing they had was to be able to run in the company newsletter, hey, we got 3 generations working at this plant. Love to do that. Because essentially the ownership was 3 generations, corporate office. But you run into those things. So these are all things that should relate. I mean, my father-in-law had his own company. He was in the construction, and literally when he was quitting, he closed. He wasn't going to sell his name to anybody else. Nobody else was going to have a company with his name on it. A lot of times, back in the day when we had owners in the office with their name on it, as opposed to holding companies and corporate entities, that was a factor. Now, as I talk about as a motivator, there are precious few companies I can think of where the owner's there. Rare and rare. Still some, but rare and rare. Even the ones that have local ownerships, a lot of times we find out they're not actually there. So all things to consider. But when you look at things, you have to look at why do people do it? And how do you use the things that motivate them to do the safety? And again, it's good business. It comes down to dollars and cents. It comes down to a management system. All the stuff we talk about with safety program is the same thing you get in an MBA program. It's the same thing if you read Coach Saban's book on process. It's the same stuff. It's just good management techniques. A lot of it involves people. Okay. And the correct answer to the question is all of them. So I've talked for 10 minutes to go through my 3 cute slides. So what is your safety program? Okay. This is my OSHA book. Is that what it is? The thing you pull out when you get an inspector to show up? When was the last time you looked at it? Is it what you do? Okay, do you look at it and think, what the heck is this? Why did I pay somebody to write this? This has nothing to do with our business. Oh, by the way, I say we're doing this and we're not. Okay, this is also the basis for willful violation. The list can go on. And we were talking about that just before we got started. This is common. I've got one company I worked with in the 90s, did not have to have a process safety PSM program, but they paid somebody to put it in. So guess what? They weren't doing it. OSHA shows up. They've got a PSM program. So they were looking to see if they did it. What they ended up getting cited for was all the stuff in it's the Ammonia Refrigeration Society. It's not ANSI, but it's another one of those. There's a very detailed document that says all the program and maintenance you have to do on it. They were cited for that. So yes, there are things out there people can cite you for using that. Basic truths. Safety is not just compliance. OSHA is minimal standards. The way OSHA is set up, the way they're legally established by the Act, they're minimal standards. They're not supposed to be overwhelming. They're not supposed to be the top tier. It's like what is safe enough for you to get pulled over and written a ticket. And that's the whole thing with this. OSHA is in the business of protecting the American worker. They do that by creating standards, which take 10 years to do, and by going out and writing citations. So that's what they're in the business of. Now, the other truth is you can be in compliance. You can have high injury rates, but you're legal and you're still losing money because of your injuries or your programs. My thing with companies is you need to integrate all this into a single system. Your safety program should not be separate. It should be integrated into your production. Anything you do as a company, I always ask them, are you a well-managed company? Everybody says yes. Okay, well, manage safety the way you manage everything else. Assign tasks, assign everything. But when you make it something special and stick it over here as something extra and separate, it doesn't get done. It doesn't get done right. To be efficient, to be effective, your production procedures, your quality procedures, your basic rules of how you do things should be tied up into a concise procedure where everything is part of your process. You know, not here's our safety process, here's our manufacturing process, here's our quality process. And companies do what we just said. Now, this is always a destination. You never arrive. So it's a continuous improvement argument. You know, we've always got to get better. And as I stand here in my bright white shirt that says A on it, and University of Alabama, I will be quoting Coach Saban. You always got to get better. We got to analyze. We got to look at what we're doing. We got to find ways to do it better so we can be better at it. We can be competitive. We can win. This is the same process. It's just we're not talking about football. We're talking about business. And there's a lot of management systems out there, whether you want to call it Six Sigma or Lean or anything else, that this is their goal. And there's always been somebody selling it. DuPont had success years ago, sold their program. So, hey. Now, your safety program needs to be your standard operating procedures, not something you got to show OSHA, not something for an attorney, but this is how we do things day in and day out. It's supposed to be there for your managers, but it's really supposed to be there for your employees, so they know what to do. You know, so many policies and procedures are stuck away that nobody can refer to it. It's like you see lockout now, we laminate and we tie them to the machine so employees can see them. It's supposed to be the same way for our HAZCOM, our PPE policies, all that stuff, where if an employee needs to know, I'm going to do this, what am I supposed to do? They can find that and know. Other thing with your safety program is you define all the tasks you've got. Job hazard analysis, training, self-inspections, preventative maintenance, you know. Who does what task? Who has the responsibility for it? And then who is checking up to make sure that it's being done and being done properly? It's like, okay, that's Ward's job. He's taking care of that. Okay. Ward was on vacation the past 2 weeks. What happened then? Or, you know, the different things. I mean, we go into a lot of places and we see this person does it, but they don't look at how they're doing it. There's no system to actually qualify that person to know what they're doing. It's like, I want you to do self-inspections. Yes, sir. And then you go, you got to equip people to succeed. And that's training, but it's developing the processes. And sometimes that means you need to get some expertise in. A lot of times, I've always said that's when you come to ASSP meeting. You know what I was about to do. Have to be careful. You talk to people, you can share. Somebody else has run into this. They can provide you a resource. They can tell you what worked for them. They can tell you what they fell on their face with. But it's a means of sharing, and it's a means to get input and way of getting help. Doesn't mean you need to hire, you know, $1,000 a day consultant, you know. But the other thing is, who's responsible for safety? Everybody. Everybody's responsible for their own safety. The safety director is. The owner is, you know. Bottom line, at the end of the day, whoever's in charge of that facility is ultimately responsible. It's just a matter of whether they take that responsibility or not. But, you know, what are our procedures and have we planned? Like I said, I did this presentation for RISCON. They had a bunch of really great speakers here that day on all sorts of topics. the whole thing, that every one of them, there was no intention about this going into it, but the unifying theme was plan. You know, we had people talking about emergency situations. We had, critical incident response person from up north talking. He was talking about media and everything about planning. We had lawyers. We had everything, though, came back to plan. So when this happens, you're ready. And in this case, with the safety program, plan so we don't have these problems. Plan so we don't drop a load and kill somebody. Plan so somebody doesn't not lock out a piece of equipment, grab a live wire, and get electrocuted. Plan so the guy doesn't drive the forklift off into the dock. Well, how do you do that? You do forklift training. No, you put up barriers there too. You have chocks, you have these systems. You engineering things so you cannot allow people to make mistakes. We hear this a lot in construction, get the job done. We have to get the job done. We got to get the order out. You hear this everywhere. Well, this is what it needs to be. We need to get the job done right. I've heard a lot of people in safety say we can't make people do this because we got to get the work done. If we make them do this, they won't finish. Well, you do something wrong, you have an injured employee, you have a fatality on your site. Well, how much work you gonna get done when you're shut down for the better part of however many days with emergency response, OSHA inspectors, lawyers, police, paramedics, all the people doing the investigations of the fatality? You don't think about those costs. I mean, if you have an injury, you send somebody in the hospital, OSHA's going to show up. They're there for a day or 2 days investigating. How much are your managers going to do? How much production are you going to get? Your employees just saw this guy bleed out on the floor. How much are they going to be able to work effectively? You're going to slow down. You're going to lose productivity, and you're going to lose money. For construction, let me skip this. They always say we never do the same thing. Again, I did this for construction. Truth is, they do the same task every day. They just do it maybe somewhere else. So for a lot of this, you can plan. Okay. Y'all know this guy? Can he do this? But that's kind of the expectation. Your safety director is responsible for everything, and he can do all things perfectly and jump buildings and everything else. That's why he died of a heart attack at 27, because he took his job seriously and he was working 62 hours. So, hey, this is not realistic. I mean, your safety guy, your safety director is a resource. He's supposed to be support to the line. He is there to help the people who are responsible. He's there to help with training. He's there to get resources. He's there to select the right PPE. He's there to put in input on how we should do things. This is a resource. This is a staff support. Who works for your safety director? Who reports to him? Nobody does. Production supervisors don't. Employees don't. So when he goes and says, you got to do this, hey, you're not wearing your safety glasses. He's not the guy that's supposed to be doing that. Supervisor should be doing that. And there should be some stick to it. All you usually get with things like that when you got, again, here's what I just talked about. But this is a guy on top of me. Now, this is what it turns into a lot of time. And people resent your safety director because he's like, you didn't lock out. You didn't put your seatbelt on the forklift. You're not wearing your safety glasses. Have you drank enough water today? Whatever. He can't make you do it. He does not have the authority. He doesn't do your job performance reviews. He doesn't have any say in your raises. He doesn't tell you to go home and never come back. It's a resource. So where do we start? With a plan. That's a construction standard. We've also got the ANSI 45001. We got a lot of different resources about this. In my world, we've got something called the Safety and Health Management Assessment. University of Alabama developed it. We call it the Form 33. So if you Google OSHA Form 33, there'll be this 58-item thing that we use to assess safety programs. 33. Safety and Health Management Assessment. Either one, but OSHA Form 33. That was a UA document. It was verified, developed, blah, blah, blah. Basically, my group developed it back in the 90s. Yeah. One thing we're missing is cups, by the way, Vince. Yeah. I think there's some. Anyway. This is the elements of the Form 33. This is the elements of any safety assessment. Management leadership, worker participation, hazard identification and assessments, hazard prevention and control, education and training, program evaluation and improvement. And this has been added, communication and coordination for employers on multi-job work sites. Okay. All the thing comes down to the first is management leadership. Are they committed? Do they allocate resources? Do they allocate time? Do they make sure policies are effective? A lot of things you get into this is, do you have job descriptions at your company? Do the job descriptions include the safety role? Do you have performance reviews? Is safety part of it? You know, do you do bonuses? You know, is safety performance part of that? We're not saying everything, but is it in the picture? What kind of system do you have where if somebody isn't doing their job correctly, you know, what do you do to mentor them, to, you know, help them, you know, to train them, to get them to know what they're supposed to do? And if they're not doing it, you know, and sometimes it's because they don't want to, what do you do to basically correct that activity? And we're not talking about 3 strikes and you're out rule, which, you know, is kind of the standard worker rule. Is like, do you have things for your supervisor, your managers, your HR manager, your production manager, you know, even for your general manager? I mean, this system, you need to have a set of goals and tasks where basically you define who does what, where, and how they do it. You know, and this comes back for the planning, and it really needs to be what works for you. Worker participation, getting their involvement, getting their buy-in, and it's valuable. I mean, actually have a real conversation with them. Don't talk to them, talk at them, talk to them. They do the job. They'll have suggestions. They can come up with things that'll save you a lot of money. Being an industrial hygienist, I was out someplace doing noise, and we found this noise problem. It was a vibrator on a rail car. The general manager, plant manager was an engineer. I'm an industrial hygienist, so we're planning on building something beautiful. You know, block walls and concrete, we're going to fix this, and it's going to be nice. The guy who ran the operation, and his name was Bubba, no joke, great guy. Guys, if we move those controls over there into this room, would that take care of the problem? Yes. So we're sitting there, 2 smart college boys, and you know, maintenance has got this fixed for about $50 in parts before I leave that day. Problem solved. Now, on the other side of it, he got to sit in his chair. He got to be in a heated and cooled environment. So he got what he needed too. So it was a win-win situation. But listen to people. Even when you're not looking for solutions, you need to talk to the people that are doing the job to know what the issues are, know where the problems are. And a lot of times, little things, it may not be the total fix, but they're like, you know, if we did this, And something little might improve the situation. It might improve efficiency. All this doesn't have to do with safety. A lot of this deals with efficiency and productivity. Because the thing that people miss is how safety affects productivity. We've been doing a lot of talk about heat stress. And OSHA's been talking about a standard, and it's kind of like, oh, well, if we have to do these breaks, that costs money, and oh, that'd be a problem. Well, if you don't give people rest, if you don't give them breaks, if you don't mandate them, they're not going to work at a good, efficient pace because they're impaired, they're tired, they're dehydrated. You know, you will get much more production and better production after somebody who's had a rest, gotten cooled off, and has drank a bottle of water. Put something simply. That's just all part of being effective. Okay. First thing is, how do you know this is important to your ownership? You need to find out if it is. My question to people, I always tell people, in your company, I'm pretty sure you know what is important to your boss. You are able to figure that out. You know what you've got to do. You know what's important to him and what his priorities are. However, that's communicated. This needs to be communicated in that same way where you know this is real. Do you have a mission statement? And by that, that's just basically a company value about what does this mean. Most of these mission statements are pie in the sky, but if they are conveying the actual truth and value of where your company stands, have it. Your policies. Do you have policies that basically say we're going to cut corners on safety when we get behind on production? Now, a lot of times that is in your bonus package, your expectations, your performance reviews, your production goals. Commitment. Are you committed to doing this? Is it a priority? Do you have goals? That can be injury rates. It can be we're going to put in this new program. We're going to retire this type of fall protection. We're going to put cooling stations at these places. We're going to put in the big, whatever fans to cool off people. We're going to look at our ventilation. Okay. Next thing is resources. We always talk about money, but a lot of times that's going to training. The biggest one is time. Do you have time to do it? Is it allocated to do it? Are we devoting the time to do these things? Then the last thing is set the example. People watch you. If you don't do it, they're not going to do it. Management commitment, assign duties, have job descriptions, performance evaluations, accountability for managers, how to correct poor performance. Do you have company bonuses, safety? Who's responsible for safety on the site? Is there a plan to manage safety? And that comes down to who does what, when. Are there procedures on how to do the task? How do you do self-inspections? When do you do them? How do you do them? How do you do a JHA? If you're going to have a change in process, who does that? Do you get engineers involved? Do you bring in tech people from whoever's putting the equipment in? Do you get an industrial hygienist in to evaluate the situation? So who's ultimately responsible? Game show time. Basically, with all this is get input from the employees, talk to them in a way they understand, treat them with respect, have legitimate, real discussions. Have people on a safety committee that's from different shifts, but in the end, they need to know that this is real, and they need to know that you mean it and that they trust you and that they buy into this process. Because when they buy into it, you're going to have success. I had a real small company that did this, and they were really successful with it. The employee, they're a resource. They're usually underutilized. Then you're looking at incentivizing them. A lot of times you hear about incentive systems. and it's tied to not having an injury reported, this is where OSHA goes nuts. You know, don't not. I take OSHA 300 very seriously. And a lot of this is they're not doing something where somebody doesn't report an injury. But that doesn't mean you can't put incentives out there for other things. You want somebody to make suggestions. You want somebody to participate on the safety committee. Wearing your safety glasses, wearing your PPE, reporting a problem. You know, there's been places where a big achievement has been, hi, this machine's been broken for 6 weeks and nobody told anybody until it really got broken. So, you know, instead of a quick fix because nobody reported it, supervisors didn't notice it, you know, thing broke down. It cost a lot of money to fix, and we were out of production for X number of days until we could get it fixed. That actually happened, people. So how do you engage your employees? Other thing with a lot of things in construction is, do you even consider them your employees? They work for us this week, they work for somebody else next week. I mean, literally, I had a guy that had a dead employee they picked up on the street in the back of the truck. They went out to a job site and a wall fell on the 2 guys. Guy's like, yeah, they're not really my employees. OSHA did not accept that argument. A lot of times when you talk to them, you want to talk to them like you talk to your dad or your son. Talk to them like somebody you care about, somebody you're concerned about, how you engage them, treat them with respect, treat people the way you'd like to be treated. Okay. A lot of this comes down to just basically risk assessment. Do you do JHAs? Do you do them properly? Do you look at non-routine things? Do you look at emergency situations? Do you have effective investigations? Do you have instant accident investigations that actually get to root causes? Now, this is where root cause analysis gets to be a problem, because you look at the data in all the management books and the courses that were taught, basically they're going to tell you that at least 85% of the root causes go back to it being the manager's fault. Failure to plan, failure to allocate, failure to supervise, failure to on and on and on. Matter of fact, when you get through most of those, it's pretty hard to see that anything isn't the manager's fault. They don't like hearing that, because the thing that goes into it next with this is liability. But, you know, then you've got to look at the outcome. What body parts are affected, severity of injury. You know, do we have property losses? I mean, a lot of times it's like nobody was hurt. Okay, nobody was hurt, but this piece of machinery was damaged. That machinery is a $2 million piece of equipment. We're going to have to get somebody from Cincinnati to come down to fix it. That's going to take blah, blah, blah. So your business is impaired. How much money are you losing? How much product did you lose? I had somebody call me yesterday about creating a policy because somebody turned a switch that cut off a heater. So basically all the product running off that line for while that heat process was down was not going to pass quality. So they had something in the neighborhood of about in 6 hours, $100,000 worth of product they were going to have to toss. It's not always injuries. And the scary thing is I've got a general manager calling me about that. If he'd had somebody amputation sent to the hospital, I don't think he'd been calling me. Hazard prevention. Higher issue controls, PPE controls, preventative maintenance, substitution, all the stuff we've always heard. Training, train everybody. You know, go through the detail of your system. Go through the hazards, go through your processes, go through what OSHA requires. Instant investigation, self-inspections, but correct. The number of people that find hazards and don't fix them, that's when you go to jail. That's when you go to court. That's when you have the nuclear verdicts. Program evaluation, look at what you've got. See what works, always improve, review, and Multi-employer, this is again, primarily, different people working on sites, and you can get into this if you're a manufacturer and you've got a shutdown coming down the summer, something where you're doing a maintenance activity. Be careful of staffing agencies. This is a big deal with OSHA. They're basically telling you to have a written agreement of who does what with whoever supplies your employees. If you supervise them, you're on the hook for whatever's going on. Things to remember. Do change analysis, plan, work rules, employee mentors, employee reporting systems that you respond to, assign safety tasks, have accountability to make sure they're done and done properly, have job descriptions that include safety, you have job descriptions that actually work, performance review, organizational HR policies that support safety. And it's like, well, of course they do. Well, yes and no. I mean, there's sometimes unintended consequences, especially when you get into things that are so focused on production. But again, what is priority to your owner? What does everybody do? That's pretty much all that slide says. Failure, lost lives, serious injury, property damage, lost contracts, lost profit, close your business, you get sued, you don't get another job, the list can go on. Indirects you get into, lost productivity, labor. I mean, I had one client that was very pleased with the way they managed their comp stuff, per our conversation. They had 3 pages of OSHA injuries. This was in the 90s, so we calculated the total number of hours that were lost or restricted. What is your average hourly wage at this plant? Did a quick calculation. Came to $3.2 million. That all of a sudden wasn't cheap. And that was in 1995, 7. So, the understanding of where your money goes, understanding your profit. This is where I talk about forensic accounting, which is an old term. It was what people did in criminal investigations and other things, but really what it is looking to see where your money's going. And a lot of times when you get into like your indirects on labor cost, if you've got people that are out because they're injured, and this is a recurring thing, I mean, you're going to have other people you have on the payroll to do their job while they're out or while they can't do it normally. How much does that cost? Recruitment of new employees. If you've got a reputation and you were in the news, hi, there was this fire at XYZ Acme, whatever, and or this, I don't want my son working there. This is a bad job. Are you getting the jobs? Are you getting the contracts? If you're bidding, what's your bid margin? Hey, we really need to get this job, and okay, we just bid this job, and we may not make money on this job. Seen that happen a few times. Will they even allow you to bid? I've had that conversation a few times too. We just don't want our name associated with you, and you're not going to be on our site. Nuclear verdicts. This is one of AGC's slides. In 2023, there were 129 verdicts over 10 million. There were 27 verdicts over 100 million. The mean award was 44 million, and the punitive damages is in a third of the cases. This is going up. Jeff Rogers does this presentation called Nuclear Verdicts. He did it here a couple of months ago. It's kind of worth hearing. A lot of interesting things going out there in the world. On October 10th, we are going to be doing the title is going to be Litigation Consequences of a Catastrophic Event. And October 10th. It will be the monthly meeting. It'll be in Tuscaloosa. You can attend in person or you can do it virtually. We're trying to put a very wide footprint out. We've been doing a lot of things to try to encourage people to do safety, do it properly, to basically do it to improve performance, not to have the injuries, not to have the amputations. And it's going to focus on the legal aspects of it, The original joking title was, okay, I killed an employee, so why am I being sued? But, it's going to get into property and different things along those lines. Bruce Henderson is doing it from Tuscaloosa. Risk analysis, loss control, profit. They're inseparable. And profit is why businesses are in business. You don't exist to give people a job, provide benefits. It's there to make a return. Okay. System safety. This whole thing is a plan. NASA and the United States Air Force created this, and it's the system that makes things succeed. And a lot of the safety books go off on this, but that's a term I don't hear a lot in the safety profession anymore, but that's the key. All the stuff we're talking about in safety management really ties back to safety systems and safety being a system. Takeaway. Said this to begin with. Integrate safety into everything you do. Don't make it separate. Be well managed, have a plan. How do you define your success? When do you consider yourself successful? When do you consider yourself a failure? Define your goals. Supervisor's job is not to get at widgets. Supervisor's role is to make sure company policy is obeyed. And that's any policy. That can be attendance. It can be any of these other policies we have to comply with, worker protection, etc. And we can lose money through product. We can lose money through lawsuits. We can lose money through the loss of sales, loss of quality. How many recalls are we seeing? How many Toyotas have been recalled in the past few years? More than ever. And these are all losses. Losses impact profit. And we're looking at the return on investment, which is a lot of the things we talk about, indirect costs with product productivity. And again, people don't look at productivity as being affected by this, and it does. And with that, I'm done. Almost. The Birmingham Regional Office of OSHA is doing an outreach emphasis on heat. So they're trying to promote to everyone to be aware of heat. They want everyone to know that OSHA has resources. This is OSHA publication 4135, which is just a good quick primer on things. We're using that for outreach. There's a Spanish version of it, which hopefully will be being delivered to me today or Monday. But they want you to be aware of the resources. They want you to be aware of the impact. OSHA has a heat app. We're in Alabama. Let's face it, every day is a heat event. So just, know to drink water, take rest, not have cool clothing. Know it's hot. Know you have to kind of get acclimatized, the 20% rule, increasing 20% a day. But, there's a guy that died in Huntsville because of this page right here. When you get hot, dry skin that's red, you stop sweating. This is critical. Call 911. But one up in Huntsville that died, he was at the point where everything is shut down. Blood was not getting to his brain. He was delusional. He was just, I'm sure they thought he was on drugs. And everybody just sort of ignored him, getting him help. By the time he finally passed out and they called 911, took him to the hospital, he died. But if you see abnormal thinking and behavior, slurred speech, seizures, loss of consciousness, this guy needs to get cooled down. So procedures to cool people down: ice, loosening clothing, cool, rest, shade, those type of things. Wherever you can get them to be cool, you need to work at that. But drink water, replace water, avoid caffeine, energy drinks, iced tea, Coca-Colas, Mountain Dew, coffee, alcohol, all things to avoid. Chocolate bars. So all that impacts your heat ability in your body to process. So water, you need to be replacing the fluids you sweat out. So you're going to be drinking a lot more water than you want. They say, at least a cup every so often. I think it's more than that. So push the water. That should be the message to everybody. So again, this is something the regional office wants everybody to know, and to know there's resources. And if anybody needs help with that, if you need somebody to do outreach training, if you need us to help you with your safety issues with OSHA or safety plans, call me. I mean, we're available to do consultations, which is free. We do industrial hygiene assessments, but there's also a lot of people that just email me or call my phone number and I'll talk to. We're happy to do that. The point with this is we want to make sure people are okay. Anyway, thank you, everyone. Anything anybody wants to talk about? Okay. Vince?
Thank you, Randy.
I
Appreciate you going through that. And you mentioned the Jeff Rogers nuclear verdicts. We do have a recording of that on the ASSP, Alabama ASSP YouTube channel. So you can go to that. Look, when you get a link for this one that comes up, you can follow it and look at the others that are there, and you can find that that video. It is a real good one to see. Are there any new folks, new members, just recently members? Are there any special announcements? I'm going to go over a few things, but are there any special announcements that you guys would like to bring up? Or anybody on the Zoom? Or any special safety shares? Tom likes to ask for that, and we haven't really stressed it, but sometimes it's good for folks to know what goes around at different locations. Just recently, we had a one of those motor lifts, one of those cranes that lifts things. You roll it around, you put it over your car. We use it at our site to help us pick up parts, and it helps to reach over the equipment so it doesn't damage the machine while you're picking a piece up over it. So it's not heavy stuff we're lifting, but we're using this thing that could lift 2,000 or 3,000 pounds over something else. So the young man is handling the equipment. He's decided to let it go down while he's in the process of moving it. And the only place he has to grab it is the body of the machine, and it kind of comes down on its scissors on his finger, breaks the tip of his finger. Thankfully, it wasn't any worse. They thought it might have to have surgery to fix it. Busted his fingernail up. So like I said, thankfully it's not any worse. It didn't lose any time, but for a little while he's stuck on this lift coming down on his finger. We got to looking at it, and this was one of our older lifts, and none of the other ones are designed like that. This one had basically a scissors. It had two pieces of metal that could come down and catch your finger, where all the newer ones and the brand new ones are all designed with a hinge that greatly reduces the chance that you could get entrapped. So we took that one out of service, gotten rid of that one, bought a new one to replace it to fix that problem. But, just having things there that dangerous, been using for 20 something years, and then to have this injury. So it's hard to find everything that could hurt you out there, but we need to keep our eyes open, keep looking, even look at things that, with new eyes, that hurt us, and we didn't see it coming. So those kind of things are out there. Thankfully, it wouldn't have hurt any worse, but it could have been bad. We have some items that Tom put together. Doesn't look like Tom's going to be here today, so we're going to go ahead and go through that. There are some changes from a government affairs point of view, targeting based on 2023 injury and illness rates are going to be special inspections that are going to be coming up. So some companies, of course, will need to be looking at that. How were our rates going through the years? That could affect whether or not we have someone coming into the facility to do targeted inspections. Identification of establishments with increasing incident trends, specifically those rates at or above twice the 2022 private sector average. So as those rates are compared, as we come up with our own rates, it's helpful every once in a while to look at how they compare to the national averages to see where are we. Could that cause us to stand out as someone who needs to be inspected? Inclusion of low rate establishments to verify data accuracy. So they'll probably continue to pull some numbers out of the hat and go to those facilities to make sure that they're counting the numbers correctly, make sure that they are as safe as they say they are, and inspection of non-responders. So if anyone doesn't turn them in, that's another reason to go out and do an inspection and look at that facility. There's the ASSP Safety 2025 that's coming up in Orlando. We've been hearing about this, so it's coming up next month. Hopefully a bunch of us get to go. And we've also got the Governor Safety and Health Conference that's coming up in August. Another thing that will be great. Sounds like I haven't been able to go to one yet, but I'm gonna go. I'm trying to go next year. Sounds like a really good program. Very professionally done and managed. We have no meeting for this chapter in July. So hope everybody enjoys the vacation. It's just a good time for us to take a breather. In July, there will be some section activity. Auburn, Opelika, Montgomery section has a meeting at the Neptune facility. All lunch provided by Neptune. So keep an eye on that. For those of you who are in that area or would like to participate for things going on in that area, the speaker is Robert Moore. Okay, is that the same thing? Okay, we've got something else. We have a speaker for Robert Moore, Loss Control Manager, Workers First Compensation Fund. Yes, that's the same thing. So let them know by July the 15th that you'll be going. In August, we have Mr. Tom Robinson at AGC, preventing mental illness in the workplace. That'll be for our meeting. In September, we'll have Mr. Danny Smith, Blame versus Accountability. And then in October, something that Randy mentioned, I think the name will be changed a little bit from this, but that'd be a good meeting to participate in. UA Safe State, July, some training opportunities, OSHA 7005, and it's going to be on the 25th of July, one-day public warehouse training, and 7405, one-day fall hazard awareness training, construction industry. Something I like to point out is that construction doesn't necessarily happen by people who are contractors. Sometimes we as folks who are managing our own facility people, sometimes we do construction. So we need to keep that in mind for things like this. When we have facilities guys who crawl all over our building doing work, they may be doing construction work. We need to kind of take that into account as a part of our operations. There are other classes that are listed in Alabama Safe State, so keep that in mind, and UAB. Any other things that we need to bring up? Do want to point out the CEUs. Tom has has been doing a lot of research into this and want to make sure that our CEUs are being counted. I would have said last month that of course our CEUs are being counted, that we are being taken care of, everything's fine. Well, we find out that that's not necessarily the case. So we turn this stuff in when we have these meetings and we're supposed to get 0.1 CEU out of it. But from what we can tell, not all of them have been turned in properly or are still waiting to be done, that kind of thing. So Tom is checking to see what's the best method to, number one, make sure they're turned in properly, and number two, get the most CEUs out that we can. If we can get more than 0.1, that would be nice. So he's working on that. So that is the reason for the change in our sign-in sheet. We'll be talking about this a little bit in the future. We just want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to get the most we can out of these meetings and make sure that what you are expecting is happening. So just be aware of that. You'll hear more about it in the future. And if there's any suggestions that you have on how to manage that, please let me know. Going back to our membership questionnaire, since we were having this meeting today, we thought, hey, why don't we bring this with us? And let's talk about it a little bit. If you happen to have any suggestions, if you'd like to see a change in our date and time, if that would be, if people would be more likely to come to a meeting if it was a different day, a different time period, different reason for coming, please let us know about that. So if you have any comments now, even if you have any suggestions. So we want again for these to be useful, for them to be helpful. Yes, great to have the fellowship, but if it's just at a hard time for everybody to come, then and we aren't optimizing it, then we need to be able to make changes and grow with what's necessary to keep going.
Question. So part of this is, so many people work remotely on Friday. And maybe that's not always the situation. It's like, is Friday a day that people want to do meetings?
Y'all are here today, so you made the effort, but you know, it's kind of like, I know I've done webinars on Friday, a couple of them to meet some internal issues with my support group. And you know, the last one I did, it was like half or less than what, you know, you usually get. So, I'm just wondering, or we're wondering, you know, is Friday one of those things where it's just not optimal, you know? The question becomes, okay, if not Friday, when? So.
Right. Fridays are, Mondays is too busy. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you got things going on. Fridays, you're kind of slowing down the weekend, so maybe, yeah. Okay, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate your being here. Those of you on Zoom, we're going to be shutting down now, and the folks in the room, we're going to fellowship with lunch.